Hey, what's up, parents and teachers, and maybe some students out there? Today, I'm going to tell you about what is neurodiversity and why does it even matter? Why should we even care about this term? It's a very important term in my line of work, so I'll be explaining that to you again for the first time. My name is Seth Perler, sethperler.com. I'm really glad that you're here. I work with a lot of students who think differently. They learn differently. They don't fit in the box. And I like people who don't fit in the box. I enjoy being around people who who break the mold and who are complicated and who are interesting. And I'm going to teach you about neurodiversity, but I don't want you to feel like you're going to walk away from this video having a formal definition. That's not how I roll. What I want to give you in this video is I want you to walk away from this video with a vibe, with a feeling, with a sense of what neurodiversity is, a strong sense of what it is. So why is it even important to understand the term neurodiversity? The reason it's important is because we're in the business of, quote, educating students. We want to educate people. Why do we want to educate people? Because we want them to have a great life. We want them to have a great life now, and we want them to have the tools to be able to build a great future. We want them to have a high quality of life. We don't want them to have an average life or a mediocre life. We certainly don't want them to have a bad life or a stressful or unhappy life. We want to give people a great life. And education is where we give people the tools. Does it always work? Of course not. Why doesn't it always work? Well, because we can't always, or we don't always meet everyone's needs adequately. So the reason it's important to understand neurodiversity is because when we don't, is because we want people to shine and have a great life. And when we don't understand neurodiversity, when we misunderstand human beings, when we interpret things incorrectly, then we address problems incorrectly, we address needs incorrectly. And when that happens and we can't give people what they need, then that diminishes their quality of life. It limits their life. It gives them less choices, less opportunities. It lowers their quality of life in the future. And that is not what we're in the business of doing. So that's why it's important. Now, before I get further in, I want to mention that it's really important for us, parents, teachers, and students, anybody, it's important for us to be aware of the intentions behind the words we use. So we want to make sure that we're being politically correct in a way, but we also don't want to overdo it. So we have to use words to describe things, but there are some words in this whole neurodiverse this world of understanding this concept that can be misconstrued or taken the wrong way. So just be sensitive to how we label people. You know, labels serve a purpose, but they're not everything by any means. So people can take labels way too far and think that a label just, they can read too much into it and then again misunderstand the student, which is not what we want to do. So neurodiversity, basically this refers to neurologically diverse brains. Brains are very different. We are extraordinarily complex beings. Okay. And we want to put terms within education. We want to put things into simple terms and think that we can quantify things and measure everything. And oh my God, it's so dangerous the way that we measure kids with grades and scores and the way we perceive things sometimes. So neurodiversity refers to neurologically diverse brains, different brains, that people think differently. Your experience of thinking feels different than somebody else's experience of thinking. Learning differently. We have different experiences that we're coming from. We have different values. So neurodiversity refers to that. We have different ways of interpreting, processing, feeling, sensing, thinking, learning. Now, one of the problems with neurodiversity is that it's invisible. Often we can't see what's going on inside somebody. And so I talk a lot about iceberg theory, where we see the tip of the iceberg a lot of times. We might see falling grades. We might see frustration, anger, sadness. We see things on the outside, but what's underneath the iceberg? And in my work, working with these students, that's what really matters, finding out what's at the root of this stuff, what's really going on behind the scenes. So with neurodiverse students, oftentimes they aren't even noticed as neurodiverse. So, and I'll talk more about that as I go on. But one of the problems that happens because it's invisible is that when a neurodiverse student is struggling in school, that we want to simply label it. Yeah, you're just lazy. You just don't try hard enough. You just need to work harder. You just need to be more disciplined. You just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You need to be more motivated. You need to be more rigorous. You need to try hard, do your best. You have so much potential. And we say all these messages, and our intentions are good when we are sharing these messages or these sentiments, but oftentimes the student starts to internalize this, and they start to feel take it inside, and they start to feel shame. And shame is a very corrosive thing. It really affects these kids very deeply. And as you probably know, you adults, like, we can carry this stuff for years. I doubt that there's an adult watching this right now that doesn't have some part of their life where they worry too much about what other people think of them. We are raised to fit in the box, to conform, to do what you're told, and then we're shamed if we don't. So anyhow, I wanted to mention that neurodiversity, as you know, I'm sure if you're watching my stuff and you follow my blog and stuff, you know that neurodiversity doesn't mean anybody's bad. It's just different. Bad is a shaming thing. Just different. If anybody's dropping the ball, it's us adults not meeting the needs of neurodiverse kids. So I want to talk about another similar term, neurotypical and neuroatypical. So neurotypical is a term that came out of the ASD community from somebody, I don't know who it was, I should look this up, but somebody with autism came up with the term neurotypical. So we have neurodiverse, we have neurotypical, we have neuroatypical. Neurotypical would be sort of normal people. Now, there's no such thing as a normal person, but a neurotypical person, that word, and this is where I was talking about words before, would refer to somebody who's more typical neurologically. Now, what we do in education is we tend to take this thing called education, and we tend to want to standardize it. We want to say that there are these standards. We want to look at sameness. We want to look at people being neurotypical. We teach to the middle of the bell curve, not the outliers. The kids I work with are the outliers. Neurodiverse kids are outliers. We group people in our schools we want them to be the same age, the same grade level. We want to teach them the same chapter, give them all the same homework. We want to cover the same material. We want to follow the curriculum. We approach education with this idea of standardization and sameness, and that everybody should be at certain grade levels and blah, blah. And that is not what neurodiversity is about. So I wanted to mention standardization and how that influences so much of what we do subconsciously in our education world. Now, the idea here is that students should work hard and do the curriculum and do what they're told and cover the material. And if that were to happen, then everything would be okay. Well, if they just apply themselves, they'll learn what they need to and they'll be happy. But everybody is different. Everybody learns differently, okay? So there's another related concept I want to mention in this talk today, and that is the concept of asynchrony. And asynchrony is the same thing. It basically states that kids do not develop synchronously. You can't take 1,000 third graders and they all be at the third grade level. You have kids who are that age who are, some are way ahead of other kids in certain skill areas and some are way below in other skill areas. And you might have a third grader, let's stick with that one, who is capable of 6th or 7th grade math, who is reading at a high school level, whose handwriting is at a kindergarten level, whose maturity in some situations, like with peers that are not their age, maybe with older peers or with adults, their maturity is off the charts. They can have really deep, intelligent conversations, but their maturity when it comes to not getting what they want with certain things is really infantile. Like, Asynchrony says that it's not this line and you have all these domains and all these areas that you can measure, and everybody's supposed to be at the same place. And if they're not at the same place, the worst thing to do is say it's the fault of the student again. In my opinion, it's the fault of how we approach serving them. But you have kids who are all over the place. So if you have one kid and they may be in all over the place. Now, do you have neurotypical kids who are generally speaking at grade level in certain areas? Sure. That's the definition of typical. But again, this video is about the neurodiverse, neuroatypical, asynchronous kids. So I want to mention asynchrony. I also wanted to mention that what we're really doing here when we're working with a human being or trying to educate them so that they can have a great future is we want to help them build the things that are going to help them have a great future. We want to help them develop their strengths and their interests and their gifts and their talents and their passions. And people have different strengths, interests, gifts, talents, and passions. But that's what our kids are going to be able to build a career on, is the things that they're interested in, that they care about, that are purposeful to them, that are meaningful to them, that incorporate their strengths or their talents or their gifts and stuff like that. And that too is diverse, is neurodiverse. I wanted to mention processing. One of the things that happens with people, we're processing information, and you have to take into account how somebody processes when you're looking at neurodiversity, because a lot of the students that I work with who are extraordinarily intelligent have processing issues. And when somebody has a processing issue, they can look and they can be shamed with the same thing. You're being lazy, you're not motivated, you're not trying hard enough. They can look like they're not trying. And sometimes when they get older, they're frustrated as heck with trying because they've tried so hard and all they've done is been shamed for it. But they can look like they're not trying, but they can be trying really hard because they're struggling to process information. They can really be shamed. So I wanted to mention that. And let's see. Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk about 2E. So 2E students are by definition neurodiverse or neuroatypical or asynchronous. So a 2E student is gifted and talented in some area. So if you were to standardize people, they would be gifted or above average in those domains, in certain domains. But they also have learning challenges or learning disabilities. They might have sensory issues. They might have ADHD, autism, Asperger's, dyslexia, dyscalculia, Tourette's, traumatic brain injury, trauma. They may have any number of things that are affecting their learning and their processing. So now 2E is kind of misleading because that assumes that there are two exceptionalities, but there can be multiple exceptionalities. In fact, usually there are. And sometimes things are undiagnosed or unnoticed, or so you have to take that into consideration too. And then there's a term called comorbidities, which also it's kind of a morbid word, but comorbidities would mean that there are more diagnoses going on at the same time. So anyhow, the point of all of this so far with this neurodiversity is people learn differently. And people need to be taught differently. We cannot throw a standardized cookie cutter curriculum at everybody and train our teachers and say, follow this cookie cutter curriculum, do it the way we tell you to do it, and everybody will do just fine and look great on the test, and all will be well. That is not reality. People learn differently. They think differently. They feel differently. They process differently. They need different things. And our job as adults is to do our best to give them what they need. Can we do it perfectly? No, but we can do a much better job than we're doing right now. So what do we do about it? Well, what we're going to do about it is we are going to teach people as if they learn differently. So we can use any number of teaching methods to do what's called differentiation. Differentiation is an old education term that implies that we teach or approach teaching people differently. We make accommodations for people. We make modifications for people. We care about the kids we are teaching. We listen to them. We ask them what they need. We usually don't do that, but we can do that. We can do what I call creatively differentiated curriculum or creatively differentiated learning experiences. And I like that term because it implies that we are creatively differentiating learning experiences for students so that they have some choice. They have a lot of choice. They have input. They have ownership. They have buy-in in their learning. And we don't shame them. What we can do about it is not shame them. Look at what's underneath the tip of the iceberg. And I think part of the problem and part of the reason that we don't train teachers to do this, and there are definitely teachers who do this, and a lot of the teachers that really differentiate well do it because either they're gifted teachers or they've worked really hard in developing and honing that skill of differentiation. And they've been empowered by their administration, which doesn't often happen, to creatively design things that are going to be highly engaging and meaningful. The thing is that teaching like that is not cheap. It is not easy. You can't cram 35 kids in a room and expect the teacher to have the resources and the time to be able to meet all the needs of a group of kids that is extraordinarily neurodiverse. And we have a model of education that is designed to increase revenue. And we don't see this because it's behind the scenes. But like Pearson, which is one of the standardized testing companies, is a $9 billion a year company. And their revenue model, their model for profit is very simple. They're selling tests, very low overhead, very high profit. They do not want the story changed. Money influences politics and policy, and there's textbook companies. Textbook companies make a lot of money. There are these things called consumables. What is a consumable? Basically is a book that has to be thrown away at the end of the year, so you have to buy new ones. They're very expensive for school districts. Buying electronics for school districts, we sell the story, well, you can put everything online and that'll just be great. Well, that obviously causes a lot of problems because the place where the kids are supposed to focus is absolutely filled with distractions, and they don't have the executive function to ignore the distractions. So the point is that changing the way that we teach this stuff is really hard because people profit from education, even though we don't see it. We don't think, oh, the textbook companies, the curriculum manufacturers, the tech companies, even the food companies like Cisco, like these are people who are, let's take the food company too, like that are selling extremely low quality food, extremely cheap food for as much profit as they possibly can. They want to keep profit. This is not about what do kids need. Can we really meet their needs? No, we're still cutting funding everywhere we can and blah, blah, blah. That's why there are so many protests this year. Teachers are trying to live a good life, to serve kids, to have the resources they need, to have the time they need, to have what they need to be able to serve these kids. And anyhow, so finally, to wrap up, neurodiversity. Forgetting everything I said, let's go back to the beginning. What are we doing here? We are trying to educate human beings to build on their strengths. We're trying to help them have strong enough executive function so that they can execute on the goals that are meaningful and purposeful to them. We are trying to create healthy and secure attachment with parents and teachers. And the more dysfunctional a school is, obviously, the more dysfunction and dysfunctional attachment you're going to have with the adults in these kids' lives. But the better a school does at having mentally healthy teachers, and the better we as families take care of our own mental health, the more we can have healthy and secure attached relationships. Relationships are everything, so ultimately we want to teach our kids how to have fantastic relationships. We want to value their diversity, to see these unique human beings. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to give them the executive function, building on their strengths, developing their skills, honoring that they're a unique individual, and we want them to shine. We want them to have a great life now and set them up to be able to have a great future. So, again, what I was trying to do here was give you a vibe, a sense of what neurodiversity is. I hope that I did that in this video. Again, my name is Seth with SethPerler.com. Really appreciate you. If you have not subscribed to my blog, you can subscribe there. I send out stuff every week, and I have a free course for parents. And if you like myself, please share it with somebody today. And leave a comment. If you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment below. And I hope that you go shine your light today and have a fantastic day. I'll see you soon.